Had maybe 20 phone calls, maybe over the years about they didn't put the orifice inside to switch it to propane. It's never really happened. They ended up finding it. Sometimes it, gets pushed back, or
They're always
sometimes.
going to be right here on the left. They're taped to it, but like Jeff is saying, if they're not right here on the left, get your flashlight and just look back here. They're usually right back here behind everything.
Yeah, sometimes I think they
Just
might come loose
dirt
and slide to the back, but they're
bouncing around, yeah.
at least thus far they've always been there. Just sometimes it takes a little extra looking.
So usually, it looks like someone just took out my other one. But on the left-hand side right here, there's going to be propane, and then there's going to be a red one that says natural gas high altitude. So there's going to be two of these baggies in here, propane and high altitude. The high altitude is for 5,400 elevation and higher, so you guys probably won't really deal with that ever. I think the only places are up in Mammoth, Tahoe areas that they do that. But all we're changing is we're taking on these two screws right here, and we're changing just this little metal orifice. And it's got a little groove cut into it, so you can't put it in upside down, backwards, the wrong way around, anything like that. And it comes with extra O-rings and stuff like that. You don't need those. Just you can use the ones that are installed. They're not special propane O-rings or anything like that. They just give extra just in case. I usually do it when it's in the box still on the ground, because taking out the little tiny screws holding the orifice in can be kind of difficult when it's sitting up like this, and it's just because they're just tiny little screws and getting your finger in there while it's sitting up. But yeah, so that's as easy as it is to switch from natural gas to propane. One other thing is that if you read the install manual, it'll say flip dip switch number 1. Dip switch number 1 is right here on the left hand side. Flip that one back. I get calls all the time. Hey, I changed the orifice, I flipped the dip switch, and it says it's not. It pops up and says it's not propane because they flipped this dip switch right here. So then I flipped dip switch number 1, and that was due right there, but it's this one on the left. So, dip switch number 2 is just temperature lock. I always flip dip switch number 2 on outdoor installs, just because when it's outdoor, it's open, and little kids like to press buttons, and they'll go up and hit the plus and minus, turn it up to 140 degrees, turn it down to 85 degrees. But if you flip dip switch number 2, it's a temperature lock. All it does is we can't turn the temperature up and down until you undo dip switch number 2. So any outdoor install, I always do dip switch number 2. Or on any install ever, so the homeowners don't go mess with it all the time. I think that every single install that I've gone to, the temperature's been at least 125 to 140. And if you guys look at the front page of this guy right here, it's going to be the NP2 temperature rise chart. So this is going to tell you exactly how many GPMs you're going to get out of each of our units. So our biggest unit, so basically the way tankless water heaters work is they take the ground temperature water and they raise it up to the set temperature. So around here, the temperature is about 60 degrees plus or minus, winter, summer, hotter, colder. And then we always want it set at 120, so that from 60 degrees up to 120, that's a 60 degree temperature rise. If you take the 60 degrees to look over, our biggest unit, you're gonna get 6.5 GPMs. But I go to homeowners' houses all the time, and they're used to a tank water heater. And the tank water heater, if you want more hot water where it lasts longer, you turn the temperature all the way up, because everything has mixing in the house, so you're gonna, have more hot water. But they think the same thing with tankless water heater. So they're like, oh, I like my water hotter, I want it to, be better, so they go bump it up to 140. So if you go to an 80 degree temperature rise from 60 degree ground temperature up to 140, it's gonna be 80 degrees, you're only getting, 4.9 GPMs instead of 6.5. So I always try and explain to the homeowners this right here. The higher you set the temperature on the tankless water heater, the less efficient it's going to get, the less gallons per minute you're going to get. So a lot of times I just flip that, but then the homeowner's gonna probably call you back and wanna turn it up, so sometimes a lot of guys don't like flipping to switch number 2, but it's just there, just so you guys know about it. And now talking about this guy right here, this chart, this is how you're gonna size any of our tankless water heaters for the job. So we don't like to say this unit's good for 3 bedroom, 2 bath, this one's good for this. It's more off of the usage and the homeowner's usage.
So let's say you're going to be hooking up like an SR4 dishwasher. Let's say it's in a commercial application or running natural gas, and you're going to run maybe more than one parallel because it's going to need more. Do you have any recommendations? Also, I was going to ask, because years ago you guys did not, if you ran circulating pumps, you avoided the warranties and things like that. So I don't know if any of that still applies.
Like an exterior circulator pump, the only time it lowers the warranty if it's a continuous circulation where it never shuts off.
Does that have to be on a timer or pressure
it can
flow
be on a
switch?
timer, yeah.
But-
But if you hook up an exterior circulating pump, it doesn't do anything to the warranty.
Okay.
Unless it is, what's the word for it? If it's uncontrolled, where it's literally the pump is pumping 24/7, 7 days a week.
Well, a lot of residential pumps are like that, you know.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is more of a residential water heater. It's just that years ago, I know it avoided warranties, and especially in some applications when we have multiple tankless units, you know. So I didn't know. I was just kind of
I haven't heard anything about an exterior pump
Okay.
warranties.
Yeah, it has to do with it has to do with whether it's demand the timer, whether it's the timer or how the recirc. Most recirc pump now don't just run 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you use one of those, yes, it will.
Yeah,
But a lot of residential pumps, though, they do, though. They just, I mean, they don't really cycle on and off unless they got a timer on them. A lot of the residential pumps.
Yeah, like you're talking about like big apartment complexes.
Yeah.
Like that, where they want to make sure that the homeowners have.
Well, back we were working on 40 units, yeah, they had 20 units on each side with big tankless water heaters with circulating pumps. They were like half horsepower pumps. I mean, they were huge, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the warranty. It says recirculation and uncontrolled recirculation, and then it basically drops the warranty down.
So can we go over like cleaning also,
We'll
if
get
you don't
to
mind?
that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And honestly, any questions? Just ask.
don't.
When you're talking about hooking up a commercial dishwasher, when you're cascading 2, 3, 4 units together,
Yeah.
these things are set up. So I did work with some guys down in Sacramento for the El Fornillo in Sacramento, and we put 6 units cascaded together. The way that the tanks water, the navigans work is when there's multiple of them put together, half of them, anytime there's a call for water, half of them turn on and start producing water right away, because so down in El Fornillo, there's 6 together, so whenever there'd be a call, 3 units would kick on and start producing water right away, because it might be a 10 GPM dishwasher that's calling for a big load of hot water right away, and then it scales back. So turn 3 on, start reading the GPMs. If it's a lower GPM, then it scales back just to the 1 unit. Is that kind of what you're questioning?
Yeah, or can you stage them by temperature? Like if you're setting some at 120 and some at 1, no, okay.
If you're gonna do that, you're not cascading them together.
Yeah. The other thing is, I mean, wouldn't you be running them more in parallel, right? So you got, let's say, a bank of 10, and they all got a manifold of, you know, let's say discharge water coming out, and a manifold of water coming in, and they're all just tied in, right?
So yeah, that's all depending on how you want to pipe them in.
Yeah, because putting them in series or something like that, and you got one going into another and going into another one. I mean, that's.
So they're all going to be manifolded down, and they're all going to be feeding the one main pipe.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be feeding like
In and out of the other ones. Yeah.
They're all going to be feeding down to the one main pipe, and then one main pipe is going in.
Yeah,
So
gotcha.
anytime so the way tankless water heaters work is they turn on based off of flow. So once they sense flow, when they're all cascaded together, they know which one's going to turn on first,
Mm-hmm.
and they all rotate. So if there's 6 units together, this one's going to turn on for an hour's worth of working time.
Okay.
Whether that's 10 times in a row, 20 times in a row, it's going to work for 1 hour. Then the second one's going to turn on for 1 hour.
So then they communicate between each other off of this little bus there? Okay, that's cool.
It's called a cascade cable. It gets plugged in right here.
Okay.
So it goes up through, out the grommets, and then back up and it plugs in, and then they cascade.
Oh, that's neat.
cascade back and forth
Okay.
together. If you have it set up where it's feeding, each one's going to like a different house, and you're not going to, like a big apartment complex, and each one is feeding in a different unit, you're not going to cascade them together because they're all working off of each one. So it all just depends how you're pipeline. But yeah, normally you just cascade them all together, so you link them all together with the cascade cable, which is on the back right here. And then they all communicate to each other. You set one main unit, and whatever you set on the main unit, it's going to, all the other units are going to set it. So if you set the main unit for 120 with X recirculation, all the other ones are going to be do the exact same thing. So it pretty much makes one unit, them all work like that, one main unit.
That's great.
Yeah, but yeah, it's nice because back to when one works for an hour, then switches to the next one and the next one. When one unit hits 85% capacity, then it kicks on the second unit. Then when both of them hit 85% capacity, then it kicks on the third unit. So it only kicks them on when needed. So they keep them be the most efficient way possible.
So I know you have to change the orifice over if you're cascading them all, but you have to do all the good switches as well.
Yeah.
It's just the button settings that are going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're going to start them all up and get them all working, and then you're going to put the cascade cable on them, and then because they have to be up and started and have all this, not all the settings, but they have to get the start blazer going with the elevation, the gas, and all that stuff. And then you plug them all in, and then it mirrors all the new one. Yeah.
Okay.
It's super easy cascading together. Obviously, once you've done it before, but if you've never done it, it's kind of tricky. But you just go into the settings. I can do it in a little bit, but just go into the settings. It takes like 2 minutes to do. It's really easy. Do any of you guys do a lot of tank replacements with tankless water heaters? So if you look on the very back page, I'll show you the quickest, easiest way to get the homeowner to go for a tankless. Actually, there's a couple guys that showed up there. They got it. Okay, so if you look at the second box where it says energy factor, if you go to the right, we're at a 0.95 or 0.96 energy factor. Basically, what that means is if you're at 0.95 energy factor, every single dollar that the homeowner spends on natural gas to heat the water heater, 95 cents goes to just strictly heating the water, and 5 cents goes out the exhaust. A standard tank water heater is about out of brand new is a 0.61 to 0.64. So that means if it's a 6.1, that means 61 cents is going to heating the water and 39 cents is going out the exhaust. When you tell that to a homeowner, every single dollar you spend on gas, you're losing 39 cents. On top of that, tank water heaters are 24/7, 7 days a week, heating up, cooling down, heating up, cooling down. So you're constantly losing that extra 39 cents, where tank water heaters are just run off of flow. So once they only turn on and start heating the water when flow's being activated. And thirdly, tankless water heaters should last about twice as long as a tank water heater. As long as you keep the maintenance up and flush them out periodically, then they're going to last twice as long.
You're
So
gonna talk about scale shield, I'm sure.
yeah.
I don't
So
I don't know if John mentioned this yet. I'm sure he will, but many companies are recommending the A unit, meaning with recirc pump. Because what's happening is if you sit down and talk to a homeowner and they're like, no, I want to save, a very small amount of money to get the standard versus the A model. They get a phone call 2 years later, you go back to see the homeowner and they're like, oh, well, we want to use the recirc model. Oh, well, it's a completely different conversation between already having the A model, you know, installed and ready to go, and just you know, piping in the recirc line or doing what you have to do on the piping in, versus uninstalling or reinstalling a new unit. As far as the overall price of a job between an S and an A model, the homeowner, it's going to be a very, very
I think it's like
small.
a few $100.
Yeah.
You guys a few $100
So
more from
it's
an
worth
A.
it to encourage them to get the recirc unit now, in case down the line they want to add that efficiency and add that to the equation of their home.
I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, so if you tell that stuff to a homeowner that 0.95 efficiency rating, it's gonna last twice as long, then they're just gonna go tankless anytime. But I'm glad Jeff said that. So there's A models, there's S models. S models stands for standard, A model stands for advanced. Advanced models come with a recirc pump and a buffer tank. And like he was saying, I recommend only installing A models unless you are 100% sure that they're not going to want recirc in the future. Because like Jeff was saying, it is a pain in the butt if you have an S model to get recirc, because you have to get an exterior pump, you have to get the exterior pump cable, or you have to get the aquastat timer. It costs a lot more money. Like I say, putting in an exterior pump and all that stuff. Exterior pumps are expensive. It's probably gonna cost homeowners $1,000 minimum, plus your time and all that stuff. Versus so like a few $100 you go from an S to an A. And when they're paying $6,000 to do the tank install, an extra few $100 on there is gonna cost them anything. It's not gonna make or break it. So tankless water heaters take longer to get hot water to the fixture than tank water heaters. Because tank water heater is just a big vessel of hot water, and when they open a faucet, it's just going there already. Tank water heaters, like I said, run off the flow. This is the flow sensor. Once the flow goes through here and it senses the flow going through, it does the startup. So on the right side, it says standby right here. When this thing's in standby, it's a standby. It'll go into startup once it senses flow, and it takes about 3 to 7 seconds for it to actually start producing hot water. That's just the nature of the beast. Once it senses flow, it turns on the fan, it kicks on the gas, sends all through. So there's a little small delay before it actually starts producing hot water. On top of that, the water is going through the first heat exchanger, which this uses the exhaust gases between the water, then it goes to the main heat exchanger where the actual fire is. And going through all this, it takes a little bit of time. I'd say that usually from when you do a tankless water heater, it adds about 20 to 30 feet of piping as far as how long it takes to get out and produce hot water. So tankless water heaters take a little bit longer to get hot water versus a tank. So that's a pretty common complaint from homeowners. So like if you install one at like a 1,500 square foot house and they're like, no, I don't want recirc, I've never had it in the past, it's not a big deal. You put in an S model for them, and then they call you back in 6 months and they're like, yeah, it's taking too long to get hot water. It takes way longer than my tank water heater. If you have a tankless, all you have to do, or if you have an A model, all you have to do is get the bypass valve. So it goes at the furthest fixture. So they're probably not going to want to spend $2 to $3 grand to put in a return line. So you get this thing for $80, $100. I forget. I'm not sure how much it is. Put it in the furthest fixture, and then you go to the unit, you press a couple buttons, and then they restart. Super easy.
That thing's huge.
So the reason why this one is so big, this one is rated at 1.3 GPMs. The Takeo and the Grumpus one are rated at 0.49 to 0.51 GPMs. So they're a third of the size.
Yeah.
Tankless water heaters need at least 0.5 GPMs of fire. So if you put in a Grumpus one, I know guys like, I've been putting Grumpus ones in for years, they work great. They work great until they don't. If they don't open all the way, there gets some scale buildup in it. You know, anything like that, and it doesn't open up all the way and get the full 0.5 GPMs, this thing will just never fire.
Are those serviceable?
And the Navion one is serviceable. So it does get scale buildup, it gets some gunk in there, get some pipe dope or something like that stuck in there, you can take it apart, clean it out, put it back together. You're good.
That's for a non-dedicated line, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
So if it's putting out that much water instead of the small amount, is it gonna heat your cold water all the way back to your water?
No. The reason why that is so the Grumpus one, it works the exact same way. It is paraffin wax, so it has to heat up and it slowly heats up before it closes. This is a bimetal disc, so it senses 95 degrees and it's temperature. So yeah, that was good thinking.
I've had a good game with trying to set the timer. I mean, the first time I ever put one in, I figured out how long it's gonna take, probably every 15 minutes. Oh, hell no. They had hot water in every pipe. The kitchen, you never did get cold water. It was hot on both sides.
Yeah.
I did down until it was one time every 2 hours.
So I've
And I got it fine-tuned.
I've seen that happen before, and we're using a Grumpus pump, an exterior pump. So that happened in Grass Valley one time, and the toilet bowl in his guest bathroom was hot. Like there was hot water in the entire cold water line. Like it was crazy.
Pushing too
It was the pump was pumping too much. It was pumping too
Yeah.
hard. So we had to take a pump with the Takeo bypass valve, and all we had to do is turn the pump down to minimum because when it comes in high out of the box, so it was pumping in high. There's 3/4 line. It was maybe like 60 feet away, and it was pumping so hard, so fast, it was just pushing through and not allowing it to shut. So it was filling the whole line up. So all we did is turn the pump down to minimum,
Hello?
and it fixed that issue. So I've seen that happen before, and that's just when that just happened because the pump is pumping so hard, so much velocity that it just pushes through that valve. This one's a lot more big and robust, and it's gonna shut, and it's gonna. I've never seen that happen with a Napa valve.
Yeah.
So it's a great valve. It works well. If you have an A model, just keep that in mind. If you're 100% sure they're not going to want research, then yeah, put an S model. S models are great. They work well. But if you think they might potentially possibly want research in the future, I always recommend just putting an A model.
We don't offer anything that's gonna cause problems, so
Yeah.
we would never do the S model. We just
Yeah,
don't.
exactly.
It doesn't, as far as we know, it doesn't
Yep.
exist because
I recommend just doing
future
A's
problems, we just don't look.
every time, no matter what. There's no downside to it. We're the only tanks water heater that has a buffer tank. The reason why we have the buffer tank is to get rid of cold water sandwich. You guys know what cold water sandwich is? So cold water sandwich problem, people complain about it all the time. So we have the buffer tank because we suck out the buffer tank first. We always keep that, it's like half a gallon in there. We keep that hot. It's not gonna cost them any extra efficiency because it's super insulated in there. But we suck out of there first, and so even if you're they're never want recirc, that at least fixes cold water sandwich when you do an A model. So you're not gonna get that thing. So there's no downside to putting an A model in. There's downsides to S models in. So I always say just put A models in. Cool. Any other questions at the moment?
That exterior venting, how's that?
So, how do you make it an outdoor unit? You put the outdoor vent cap on, and it's outdoor. That's all you have to do. I've had this question from a few guys that say, well, can I do an exterior without the vent cap? Technically, no. If you do an exterior unit without the vent cap, then and Navient's tech support guys find out, they'll void the warranty on
What do
it.
you mean without any pipe at all? Just two
Just
pipes? I mean,
for
if you didn't have the
exterior.
cap and you said, yeah, no.
Yeah, they
That doesn't make sense.
So I have seen certain situations where guys have done it. Because basically the way this works is it blows the exhaust out here and it sucks an intake here. So you can't have anything within 2 feet in front of it. You can't have anything within 3 feet above it. I've seen quite a few installs, especially with the houses nowadays that are like you're at your window and you reach out and touching the other person's house. So they have this on the exterior of their wall and it's going directly into somebody's window right next to them. So I've seen in those situations they pipe it up through the eave, the overhang, and they pipe it out. I don't have any problem with that. Tech support does, so if you call tech support with any kind of issue, I would just bring a vent cap with you and then just.
So
if they're-
tech support doesn't want you to put it outside and run the vent up to the roof?
Correct.
Why is that? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Just the way that tech support Navi does it. It's just the design of this, they don't want water getting on top and leaking in, potentially leaking in here.
Oh, I
stuff
got you,
like
water
that.
flow.
Just, it's, they'll say, well, the top of it isn't rated for water, so like that be sitting on top of it, that's why they designed the vent cap. They've got a bunch of reasons like that, but in reality, common sense, if it's under the overhead, like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, I have no problem with
If-
it, each situation's different.
If you are doing that, it's under the eaves, you can put it higher, right?
Yeah.
If you're not putting that cap
Well,
on it.
you would think so, but inspectors are inspectors, and I've had a lot of inspectors that say, it says in the book, 3 feet of any overhead, over eave, anything above it. And I said, yeah, that's without prevent cap because of blah, blah, blah.
Right.
They're like, well, the book says 3 feet, so it's having 3 feet.
Yeah.
So technically, yes,
Yeah.
you can, but inspectors are inspectors and whatever they say goes. And I've had multiple guys like, hey, can you guys write up something? I was like, Navi's not gonna write up something new, especially when they don't, they say it has to be.
It's not their battle.
Yeah. So, yes, you technically could do that, but
Yeah.
is the inspector gonna pass it? Maybe. I've had a bunch of guys do that same thing, and the inspector's like, yeah, it looks good, all you have to do is just paint the pipes with UV paint. But yeah, so it's all inspectors, and you guys can call and be like, hey, can you tell the inspector this and that? I'll just call and talk to the inspector, but they're still gonna say, I need it in writing, or I'm not gonna pass it, and Navi's not gonna produce anything in writing outside of, just for liability reasons and all that. I had a poor plumber that put 2 units together at a restaurant down in Sacramento, and once he put it in, put the cap on and stuff like that, the building was, I think, like 19 inches away from the front of the unit instead of 24 inches. And he's like, is there anything Navi can do? Can they write up? And they're like, we can't, liability reasons, change anything or say anything. So he ended up having to move the unit itself to another wall after it already been piped in and everything's totally done. So sucked for him, but I mean, there's just nothing. Measure twice, cut once.
Yep, yep.
So cleaning the unit, once a year. I tell the homeowners, I say, it's just like your car. You have to change the oil in your car periodically. You have to get these things serviced. It's not like tank water heater where you just don't need to do it. It's one of those things that needs to be done because the scale builds up in the heat exchanger and it slows down the flow. And also, if it just slowly builds up in there, then it can't heat the water fast enough, so efficiency is going to drop, and you're not going to be able to, the heat counts are going to drop. There's a lot of wells up here, and Navien always recommends putting some kind of water treatment on the unit before it goes in. Navien has a peak flow system. Peak flow works great. It works up to 30 grains of hardness, and it takes out 98 to 99% of all the hardness. Basically, it works off of template-assisted crystallization. It's a TAC. So basically, there's a media, the water goes through it, and the TAC basically makes all the minerals and stuff like that bind to itself. So when they bind to themselves, it changes electrons in it, so it doesn't want to bind to metal. There's a bunch of science that goes into it, but that's basically the gist of it. Is it binds to itself, changes the electron charge, and then it doesn't bind to metal, and it sticks together for 48 hours. Then it releases. So it's not going to cause any kind of issues or problems or medical or anything like that. It's very safe. But it's a really cool system. It works great. There are a lot of other systems where they use like the magnets to kind of do the same thing, or the little metal ones and stuff like that. But those usually take out about 55% of the scale. Well, the thing that a lot of guys like about those ones is they're maintenance free. You never have to do anything. You just put it in and don't touch it again. These ones, I think you have to replace the media every 3 years. But with that stuff being on, you don't have to service the unit as much. Or if you keep up with the media on the peak flow system, you never have to clean out the unit because it's never gonna have anything stuck inside of it.
So with this peak flow, you can go from flushing it once a year to changing the media
Every 3 years, yeah. Yep.
And you don't flush it at all?
I mean, you don't have to because no scale's ever gonna build up inside of it.
If it needs to be descaled, does it give you an error code?
No. Never.
So-
You can have it installed for 15 years and never descale it, and it's never gonna do anything except for break. Because there's no kind of sensors or anything to show scale built up in there. There's nothing to, you know, sense how much scale's in there or when it is. There is a setting in here where you can just set, it's basically a 1-year timer.
Maintenance timer, yeah.
Yeah, so you can set a maintenance timer and it just flashes orange instead of red. And so the customer's gonna be like, hey, my unit's flashing orange. And you're like, oh yeah, it's been a year. It needs to be maintenance. So you can set that kind of stuff
Can you
up.
set that for 3 years?
Unfortunately, it just has this time it just has a 1-year timer. But to descale it, I'm sure you guys done it, super easy. Just make sure you always put in the isolation valves and then just run the scale through. You can get the scale solutions, little citrus solutions, or you can just use white vinegar and water. So either or. So Navient's never going to, they're always going to recommend doing some kind of treatment, but they don't require it. I'll talk about warranty for a second. So on the heat exchanger, it's a 15-year warranty. Say you put this in at a well and the heat exchanger goes bad. The reason the heat exchanger is going to go bad is because scale is going to build up inside the heat exchanger. It slows the flow of water going through the heat exchanger so much that it actually flash boils inside and literally burns a hole in the heat exchanger. Then the heat exchanger will start leaking. So if you come to a heat exchanger where there's white stuff on the outside and it's crusty and it's leaking in there, I guarantee, well, it's 100% sure that it's got hard water at the install and it burnt the hole of the heat exchanger. The heat exchanger is leaking.
Are both those heat exchangers stainless steel?
Yes. Yep. Navient will always give you the first heat exchanger on them for free. Have to call tech support, send pictures, you know, do all that kind of stuff. Actually now they have an app, it's called Visual Support. In the past, you used to have to just take a bunch of pictures, fill out the email, and send an email into them. Now with the Visual Support app, basically it's like a one-way FaceTiming where they can see through your camera, so they can see what you're looking at. So they'll be like, okay, I need these pictures, and they'll literally just screenshot while you're on the phone with them, so you don't have to do anything. And they fill out everything themselves, so it's actually really nice. Also, if you're, say, replacing the pump because the pump went bad, and you're not 100% sure how to do it, Visual Support with them, set it up, and they'll literally walk you through step by step how to do it. It's really nice. But, like I was saying, heat exchanger goes bad because there's hard water. Navient will ask you if there's any water treatment on it. You'll say no. They'll send you out a new heat exchanger. If the second one goes bad, they're gonna say, show me the water treatment. Show me what it's done doing. They're also going to ask for a sample of water so they can test it. I had a place over in El Dorado Hills that went through 3 heat exchangers in like, they were on their 3rd heat exchanger that started leaking in like less than 2 years. And the plumber's like, the water's being treated, it's not hard water. I was like, are they on a well? He's like, yeah, they're on a well, but the water's being treated. I was like, okay, you need to have the water tested. Now Navient, you can actually just send a bottle of water to them, they'll test it for you. During COVID, they stopped doing that, but they're doing it again now. but they had a big water treatment thing on it, and in order to soften water, you legally just have to take down 1 gram of hardness. So out there, they're like, yeah, it's being tested, it's being softened, like that's not the issue. I was like, get it tested, let me see. They brought it from 22 grams of hardness down to 20.5 grams of hardness. So they brought it down 1.5. I was like, yeah, you're technically softening the water, but they put in the wrong system there. So this thing needs a maximum of 12 grams of hardness for it to, still be good and not eat through heat exchangers. If you're up to 20 grams of hardness, it's going to eat through a heat exchanger in like 8 months. So the water is being softened, but it was some different water softenings, whole house system, and it was bringing it down 1.5 grams of hardness. So it was still way too hard. So it was just eat through heat exchangers.
What did you say the maximum was?
12. That's a good thing about the peak flow system is it'll reduce, you can have up to 30 grams hardness and it'll take out 98 to 99% of hardness because it just binds well.
You know how much that is, that peak flow system?
I don't, but Ryan can definitely tell you.
Yeah. we're gonna-
Does the longevity of that peak flow change depending on how hard the water is?
Yep. So there's a lot of wells up here, so I would recommend on well installs to put a peak flow on there. The reason I told you about the warranty and heat and stuff like that, don't lose the cell, don't lose money by not putting it on. Be like, you have to have this, put it in, put the tank's water heater in, and when the heat exchanger goes bad, be like, hey, remember when I told you needed this? The heat exchanger was bad at this amount of time, so now you have to get this. But so on your first install, don't lose the cell and lose money. Put it in because you know that if something's going to go bad, you're going to be able to replace it. And that's a 15-year heat exchanger. So besides that, we have 1 year on labor and 5 year on parts. So within the first year, if anything goes bad, Navien will pay partial of your labor. They don't pay whatever you ask. They have a set price for everyone in the whole country that they pay out. So it isn't going to be a ton, but it's going to be some. 5 year on parts, so if anything goes bad within 5 years, Navien will replace it, and then the heat exchanger obviously is 15 years. Commercial, it's 1 year labor, 3 year parts, and 8 year heat exchanger on commercial. With that being said, the only way to get replacement parts of that is you have to call tech support. I have zero power to get any kind of, I can't put in any orders or anything like that. All the way Navien works is they want to know what's going on with the units, why things are breaking, it's not, so everything has to go through tech support. Tech support's really good, call them. I always say when you call down to them, they're gonna put up a level 1 tech, and just immediately ask for a level 2 tech. Because the level 1 tech is pretty much gonna weed out homeowners. Call down, if you don't wanna waste 15 minutes of your time talking level 1 tech, then he goes, oh, I can't help you, I'm gonna transfer you to level 2 tech. So anytime you call tech support, just ask for a level 2 tech. But everything has to go through tech support. I give you my card, I can help you with stuff, I can help you set up all the other stuff. I can usually troubleshoot most things and say what might be going on, but if you have an error code, you're gonna have to call tech support, because if there's something wrong, then they're the only ones to get.
Who is authorized service for these units?
Anybody?
Anybody that can call tech support?
Yep, as long as you have a contractor or a plumbing license, then you're authorized to work on them. It's not like Renai used to be. I don't know if they're still like this anymore, but they used to be. You had to go through their class to work on them, to be certified. Navien said these things are easy to work on. You need a 14-inch screwdriver, and you can pretty much replace anything on there. So yeah, they just assume. And also, if you're not sure, bust open your visual support app, and they'll walk you through and tell you exactly what's going on. So it's super easy. But yeah, tech support's really big. They're really good. They know what they're doing. Most of them. They did hire a bunch of new guys recently, but they're being trained up pretty good. Any questions on anything at the moment?
I have a question. What if you're feeding the unit in half inch and
24 feet.
24 feet, right?
Inspector
Off the
won't approve it, but it will work up to 24 feet with half-inch line, as long as from the half-inch line there's enough gas. So if
From
you're,
the meter?
no,
From the branch line?
from wherever branch on, yeah. So if the half-inch line is coming off of a 1-inch line, then that's fine, because there's plenty of volume and gas in that 1-inch line. But if the half-inch line is coming off 3/4 and there's a long run of 3/4, there's probably not enough volume and gas in both of them. In the main one, but yeah, 24 feet of half-inch line, as long as there's enough gas wherever the half-inch line is plugged into. Like I said, the inspectors won't approve it, but this thing will work 100% on that. We've done extensive testing. We've tried to talk to all the inspectors and show them all our testing so they can approve it, and some of them will, some of them won't.
What's the minimum flow, gas flow?
So for natural gas, it's 3.5 to I think 10, and propane is inches of water column,
Yeah.
and propane is 8 to 13. Maybe 13.5, but yeah, 8, I think 8 to 13. And that is dynamic, not static. So that's dynamic when they're running about 4 gallons per minute. It needs to be.
So does it say what the burner starts at and what the BT is? Does it start up like?
I have no idea.
So the max is probably gonna be 199.
So yeah, our biggest unit is 199. The smaller units are broken down on here. So there's 150,000, 180, and 199.
What about your commercial units? You got anything goes over 400,000?
Every unit's commercial.
Oh,
Every unit is not indoor, outdoor, natural gas, propane, commercial, and residential. So every unit is commercial and residential in one unit.
so cubic feet per minute on LP, like 200.
I have no idea.
Usually that's what I
We
see.
go off of inches of water column.
Yeah, what I understand too is like when you go natural gas or propane, I mean, you get twice as much energy out of LP, and then obviously you gotta change your orifice. But you know, you would think that there would be a provision also when you're sizing gas line for that. You know, typically everybody's going off of just methane, so you know, it's just one.
Yeah, like the minimum cubic foot per minute, right?
Yeah, right. You know, you'd think that okay, you could drop the size down if you're gonna go LP, but no, it's never that way.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm not sure. We just, as long as there's enough inches of water column going in the unit, it's gonna work.
And how many can you piggyback or stack next to each other?
You can cascade up to like 48 of them together. It's something crazy. Yeah, we've done full football stadiums and stuff like that. So you can do any kind of job you can possibly think of with these things. Hotels, anything. Yeah.
What's the proper height? I know different counties have different rules, especially this last year, on these units.
As far as
Height requirement on the wall inside of a house.
I haven't heard of anything. Yeah, as long as it's doesn't have anything within 3 feet above it when you're doing exterior and 2 feet in front of it. Usually, the other thing is it needs to be 4 feet from any operable window or door. That doesn't have anything to do with Navien. That's just
Well, the
local.
building codes, a lot of times, you know, there's guys, we'll put these in and they'll have a window above a shower or something.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of the guys have them that the window's open, which is, we know that should never pass, but
Yep.
it seems like inspectors sometimes don't really
I
catch
mean,
that.
so inspector, depending on what inspector you get, some of them are hard on one thing and they let a lot of other shit go. So,
Yeah.
it just depends what inspector you get.
Yes, for sure.
I've seen guys go and silicone window shut and be like, it's not operable anymore. We put screws in it, silicone it shut, and then they go back and take it all out. But,
Yeah.
there people do get ingenious because it's hard to find a 10-foot section on the outside of a house where there's no windows or doors or anything. So I've seen a guy put it 14 feet up in the air on a wall and pipe it all the way down. I've seen.
We had to work on one. We didn't install like that. We had to replace it.
Yeah.
Way up on a wall.
Yep.
Pictures of us up on the ladder. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
And that was because that guy, I was like, well, how do you? He's like, the inspector said that was the only place you could go because of all the windows and doors and stuff. So yeah, so I've seen some crazy stuff. We can go to the programming really quickly. It's only take a couple minutes. I was factory resetting it so we can see what it looked like.
I thought you were telling us how fast that is to do. And then,
Yeah. That's how you do it, guys.
That's-
Any
yeah, okay.
questions?
Yeah.
All right, so this is the screen when you first plug it in. It's on the wall. It's going to say startup NTE, and they have a startup wizard. The older units. So let me go back. So the reason why tech support, everything has to go through tech support, is Navien wants to know what the issues and problems are. We came out with the NPE2 about 2 years ago now, maybe 2.5 years ago, and every single thing they changed from the 1 to the 2 was based off of tech support phone calls and known issues and problems that they wanted to fix and make sure it wasn't an issue anymore. Complaints, and all that stuff. So they went in and everything they changed just to make it easier for the installers, make it easier for you guys. With this guy, when you put one of these in instructions, you used to have to tee over to the recirc line, put a check valve in right here. Now they changed the waterway, they moved a couple check valves, so now you just do the cold water in, hot water out. That's it. You don't have to do any additional piping, you don't have to tee it over, you don't have to put a check valve. That's just one of the things that they changed. They had an issue with, what was it? Another check valve, they fixed that. They changed the fan to bigger so you can vent 75 feet with 2-inch and 150 feet with 3-inch. It used to be 60 feet and 120. They changed just a bunch of stuff just to make it easier and better for you guys. With the older unit, there was a little flap up here. There's 10 dip switches on top, and depending on what the configuration was, if it was a well, the recirc, this, now you had to flip all the different dip switches. 90% of the time, people put them in and didn't do dip switches right, so Navien's like, okay, that's a common thing that a lot of people are doing. We're just gonna get rid of the dip switches. Now it's all in the Stark Wizard. With the older unit, you used to have, in order to set the timer for the recirc, you used to have to buy the remote, put the remote in, then you can set the timer. Now it's all integrated inside of here. And any new construction, they put in the hot button for the push button to start for any new construction. So this thing is just set up for any situation. Back to the Stark Wizard. The first thing you do is set the time and date. This is really important to set it correctly, even the year and all that, because the recirc goes off all that. So set the time and date properly. Second is Fahrenheit gallons per minute. And then Celsius, so it's set up for Canadian install, so we're always gonna do Fahrenheit. Next is natural gas propane, so I'm not gonna flip dip switch number 1. I'm gonna say it's propane. And the first thing that's gonna happen is, warning, this unit is not set up properly to the configuration, to the settings, blah, 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 blah. That's when I say a lot of guys will flip this dip switch, because they say, they read in the book, flip dip switch 1, they just look at it and they're like, oh. And then they call me, they're like, I flipped dip switch 1, it's saying, warning, this thing's not configurable. It's because they didn't flip this dip switch. So hit back, I'm gonna flip dip switch 1 here, hit propane, and we're good to go. It also is gonna prompt you and it says, did you change the orifice? So I'm gonna go to yes, I changed the orifice. So it always gives you little reminders to make sure that you remember what you're to do it. Elevation is important because it changes the fan speed for the air to gas mixture in the heat exchanger. So make sure you set that properly, 0 to 2000. There's 3 different ways of recirculation. There's no recirculation, there's internal, there's external. This has gotten kind of confusing to some people. Internal means it's recirculating inside of itself. So it's going from the heat exchanger to the buffer tank, back to the heat exchanger, and it's just recirculating inside of itself. External means it's leaving the box and going into the house. a lot of guys are like, oh, I put an internal because it's going into the house. So that's a pretty common thing, but internal means it's just recirculating inside of the nav unit itself. External means it's leaving the unit and going into the house. And so we're gonna do external recirculation. And external recirculation is if you have a full recirc line or if you're using any kind of bypass
Why would
valve.
you ever want internal recirculation?
If you put an A model in for a house that doesn't have recirculation, I would put internal, because if you put no recirculation, then it bypasses the buffer tank, and so it doesn't help with the cold water sandwich.
So they're not gonna use it, but they wanna use buffer tank?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. So when you do external recirculation, it's first thing it's going to prompt you is change the two-way valve. So the two-way valve is this valve right back here. This guy right here. It's going to come in the 9 o'clock position, pointing this way out of the box. That's internal recirculation. You want to push it down. We're pointing straight down into the 6 o'clock position. That's external. So like, once again, it's gonna prompt you to remind you that, hey, don't forget about the two-way valve. And then, is there an external pump? We're gonna say no, because we're using an internal pump. It asks you that question because it will power up a piece of the PCB board that you pump the external pump cable into, and then the Navi unit can actually control an exterior pump with this timer and all that, so you don't have to buy a timer or oscillostat or anything. And then there's 4 different ways to do it. There's always on. Always on is it's going to sample the recirc line every half an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If it's 9 degrees colder than the set temperature, so if this temp it's set at 120 and it basically kicks on the pump and doesn't, not the unit yet, kicks on the pump just to push the water through the recirc line. If the recirc line is 111 or colder, it's going to kick the unit on and it's going to fill the entire hot water line with recirc. It's going to kick on the recirc. It does that every half an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Don't use that. Always on is a setting pretty much for like an old folks home or a situation where they need hot water any time of the day. If you put it in a propane install and you put it on always on, the homeowner's gonna call and be pissed because it's gonna just eat up that propane, especially during the winter when it gets cold. It's gonna kick on the recirc every half an hour. I also have guys that put it on always on, and the homeowner's like, yeah, I hear this thing coming on in the middle of the night, because at 2 in the morning, it's quiet in your house, and you're gonna hear everything that's going on. So basically, don't ever use always on. I know a lot of guys are like, I always use always on. It's gonna bite you in the ass when you do that. There's intelligent. Intelligent sounds cool. Basically, what it does is it learns a homeowner's schedule. So every time they use hot water, so then it records it, and the following week it kicks on recirc 5 minutes before that time. So if I take a shower at 6 a.m. on Monday, the following Monday it's going to kick on at 5:55 and kick on recirc. It sounds cool, but who uses hot water at the same time every day, every week? Just about nobody. So when you do intelligent, I always ask homeowner, I was like, how's recirc? They're like, the hot water is there sometimes it's not. I don't recommend intelligent, but some people like it. I don't like to use it. The one that you want to do is the weekly timer. There's also hot button. Hot button is for new construction, and it just works off of the button being pressed. But the one you want to use every time is weekly. There's a 3-day, 1-day, and 7-day. I just do the 1 day. The 3-day is you set a timer Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The 7-day you set a timer every single day. You don't need to be setting that many timers. I just do the one day because you set one timer for all 7 days. And then if you look on here where the little dark marks are, that's where recirc is going to happen. So I just asked the homeowner, hey, when do you guys want hot water at the faucet? There's a lot of people working from home now, so they say 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So if they want 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., there's a little arrow on the top. You use the up and down arrows to move it. So out of the box, it's set for 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. and then 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So if they want it all day, then we're just gonna select where there's an empty box and we're gonna go over and we're gonna add. And now it's from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Is there only one cycle per day?
No, you can do as much as you want. So I can delete this block, and then go over, and then delete this block, and go over. So you can, wherever there's a dark mark, that's where the research can happen. So you can put in as many different cycles throughout the day. But it's kind of funky to work with because you select it and then you move over, but if you keep moving over too far, it's going to add. But you get the hang of it. It's once you do it once, you're like, oh, okay, I understand how that works. You just have to play with it a little bit. So one of the most important things is once you're done, you have to hold OK for a full 3 seconds to save it, and then you're going to do your review of everything, and then you're good to go. It says LP because we set the propane. It's all 7 up here because we set the weekly timer. If you want to go in and change the recirculation settings, you set the M button, and then go to recirc. It's everything that you selected is still going to be there. And then say I want to add some time here. I'm going to add it. And then once again, the most important thing is once you get done, you can't just hit OK and then hit back, because it's going to delete everything you did. You have to hold OK for a full 3 seconds anytime you make a change in 3 seconds.
If the power goes out, how long will it hold 3 seconds?
Forever.
But the timer will be off, right? Will the clock stay active? How long?
I don't know about forever, but for a long time. Like if you saw I had to factory reset it, this thing's been unplugged for a week and a half, sitting in my garage, and when I plugged in, all the settings were still there.
So the time and date is still correct after?
Yep. Yep. If you go in, and so I'm gonna go into the menu, I'm gonna go to configuration, and then time settings. If you go in and it says 2020-0000, then that just means and you set the time, then you go in and you check it again. That means that the front panel is bad, you need the front panel. But yeah, like I said, this thing was in my garage for a week and a half without being plugged in, and I plugged it in here. I had to factory reset it because all the settings from the last strength were still on there. So yeah, it'll keep the settings from power outages.
Does it have a battery backup somewhere?
No.
So how is it keeping the time up?
It just when you turn your computer off and turn it back on. I mean, even if you let it die, it still remembers everything. It's just in the computer in the computer wizardry.
The chip.
Something.
Usually they're capacitors that hold power for stuff like that.
But yeah, it saves it all.
Okay.
Any questions?
Is there a separate setting for a dedicated line or a crossover